Despite its attempts to destroy Ukraine in the war, Russia has been having a hard time defeating the much smaller country. But have you ever wondered, how is it that Ukraine, a country much smaller and economically weaker than Russia, manages to hold its ground, even potentially getting towards turning the war around? Let's begin by setting the scene. In terms of size, military power, and economy, Russia greatly outpaces Ukraine. Russia has the largest land area of any country on Earth, spanning 11 time zones from east to west, and it's also the 9th most populated nation. On the other hand, Ukraine, while still being the largest country entirely within Europe, is dwarfed by Russia's sheer size. Russia also spends more than 13 times as much on their military, much more than Ukraine does. So, when we look at the numbers, it's hard to imagine how Ukraine could even begin to match up to Russia in a conflict. But despite this seemingly insurmountable gap, Ukraine has been able to resist Russian aggression time and time again. And they've done this not by trying to match Russia's strength, but by adopting different strategies that play to their own unique advantages. So, what does Ukraine have that Russia doesn't? A crucial element is its geography. Situated in Eastern Europe, Ukraine serves as a sort of natural frontier between Russia and the rest of Europe. This is important because it means that any conflict involving Ukraine has potential implications for the broader European region. It's kind of like being the little brother who has some big friends watching his back. But let's dive deeper. The geography of Ukraine itself is unique and it works to its advantage. Firstly, let's talk about the flatlands. Ukraine, particularly its western part, is mainly flat, which might seem like a disadvantage in military terms because flatlands are easier to invade. However, this also means that there are fewer places for an invading force to hide. This visibility can deter aggression as it reduces the element of surprise. Now let's look at the north of Ukraine, where we find the Polisi lowland. It's a vast marshy area, making it tough terrain for any conventional ground forces to traverse. Marshes have historically proven to be formidable natural defenses in warfare due to their difficult terrain and logistical challenges. This wetland area adds an extra layer of defense for Ukraine. Moving to the south, Ukraine borders the Black Sea. It might seem like an open gateway for a naval invasion, but don't forget about the Crimean Peninsula. Despite its annexation by Russia in 2014, the region is still a point of contention, and its control offers strategic advantages for sea-based defense and deterrence. Lastly, Ukraine's network of rivers, including the Dnieper, which cuts right through the country, can act as significant barriers for advancing forces. Rivers have long been used as natural defense lines in warfare, and the Dnieper, being one of the longest in Europe, is no exception. Now that we're more familiar with Ukraine's geography, one question does remain. Why is Russia obsessed with the invasion? Firstly, there's the issue of geography. As mentioned before, Ukraine is the largest country in Europe, if we exclude Russia, and it shares a long border with Russia. This makes Ukraine a critical buffer zone between Russia and NATO's eastern members. Control over Ukraine can provide Russia with a substantial buffer against any potential Western military activities, a concern that has only intensified with Ukraine's increasing closeness to NATO. Secondly, Ukraine holds crucial economic significance for Russia. Ukraine has vast agricultural resources, being often referred to as the breadbasket of Europe. Furthermore, Ukraine has considerable mineral resources, including iron, manganese, and coal, which are attractive for any nation. But the economic relationship extends beyond just resources. Ukraine has been a critical transit country for Russian natural gas exports to Europe. Although Russia has recently developed new pipelines bypassing Ukraine, it remains a crucial transit route, and control over it provides an influential economic lever. Cultural ties also come into play. Russia and Ukraine share deep historical and cultural connections, with many Russians seeing Ukrainians as brothers. For some Russians, the idea of an independent, pro-Western Ukraine challenges their worldview, and making Ukraine's control more of an emotional objective rather than a strategic one. Lastly, Ukraine's Black Sea coastline is of great strategic importance. The Black Sea Fleet based in Crimea is one of the key components of the Russian Navy. It allows Russia to project its power into the Mediterranean and beyond. Ukraine's control would threaten this naval capability, something that Russia would want to avoid. All these factors combined make Ukraine a critical piece in Russia's geopolitical puzzle. Ukraine's controls has significant implications for Russia's military strategy, economic influence, and even cultural identity. Understanding this is vital to comprehend the determination with which Russia has pursued its objectives in Ukraine. While Russian military superiority could scare many nations around the world, the spirit of the Ukrainian people has been another key factor in the country's ability to resist Russia. But how can the spirit of people make such a difference? It's about unity and determination and a sense of national identity. Ukraine has a rich history filled with storylines of resilience and overcoming adversity. The country's past, marked by periods of independence and subjugation, has shaped a national identity that is fiercely protective of its sovereignty. This sense of identity has grown stronger in the face of ongoing conflicts with Russia, and when people are united by a shared history and a common goal, they can accomplish great things. One of the ways this unity manifests is through widespread support for the armed forces. Ukraine's military is primarily composed of citizen soldiers, everyday individuals who take up arms to defend their homeland. This is enabled by compulsory military service for men, which means that the military is not some separate entity, but a part of the community, a part of the people. But the Ukrainian people's support extends beyond just providing soldiers. They also provide financial support. Remember when we talked about Ukraine's significantly smaller military budget compared to Russia? Well, Ukrainians have come up with an innovative solution: crowdfunding. In times of conflict, it's not uncommon for citizens to donate money to help support the military. This can help fund everything from new equipment to medical supplies for injured soldiers. It's not just about money, though, it's also about morale. In Ukraine, it's common to see patriotic displays like flags and banners supporting the troops. These gestures may seem small, but they can have a big impact on soldiers' morale and the overall determination of a nation. If there's one thing that's clear in this conflict, it's that Ukraine can't compete with Russia in terms of sheer military power. But instead of admitting defeat, Ukraine has turned to something else: unconventional warfare. Now, what does that mean? Unconventional warfare is essentially a form of combat where the strategies and tactics used are different from traditional ones. In Ukraine's case, it's about maximizing their resources and taking advantage of the enemy's weaknesses. One way they do this is through the use of guerrilla warfare. Instead of large, formal armies engaging in traditional battles, smaller groups of Ukrainian soldiers might strike quickly at Russian forces using the element of surprise to their advantage before retreating to safety. It's less about winning a decisive victory in one fell swoop and more about chipping away at the enemy's strength over time. In addition to guerrilla warfare, Ukraine has also used cyber warfare to counter Russia. Given the digital age we live in, cyber warfare is becoming increasingly relevant and effective. Ukrainian cyber forces have targeted Russia's communication networks, disrupted their information flows, and even launched attacks on critical infrastructure. This can create confusion and slow down Russia's response times, providing Ukraine with a big advantage. Lastly, Ukraine has effectively used information warfare. This is the practice of manipulating information to mislead or influence the enemy. Through false reports, deceptive signals, and propaganda, Ukraine can now sow doubt and confusion among Russian ranks. While these methods might seem underhanded, they're necessary when you're the underdog in a conflict. The goal isn't necessarily to defeat the enemy outright, but to make the cost of aggression so high that it's no longer worth it. Ukraine's strategies in the face of conflict with Russia have been largely effective. It's not all smooth sailing. The country faces significant challenges in its defense efforts, and it's important to understand these to fully appreciate the complexity of the situation. One of the major challenges is economic. Simply put, war is expensive. From military equipment and personnel costs to infrastructure repair and economic disruptions, the financial strain on Ukraine is immense. Add to that Ukraine's smaller economy compared to Russia, and the economic challenge becomes even more daunting. But Ukraine has taken some smart steps to address this. As mentioned earlier, crowdfunding and public financial support play a crucial role in supplementing the defense budget. Additionally, Ukraine has received financial assistance and economic support from the international community. First and foremost is the bond with NATO and the European Union. While Ukraine isn't a member of either of them yet, it has cooperated closely with both of them. This collaboration has provided Ukraine with crucial military assistance, including training of its soldiers and delivery of advanced military equipment. Now, this is where things get interesting. Over the course of the conflict, NATO countries have been sending substantial amounts of military hardware to Ukraine. From anti-tank weapons to modern communication systems, this equipment has played a pivotal role in leveling the playing field for Ukraine against Russia's larger and more technologically advanced forces. As of 2023, more than 30 countries in the world have sent aid to Ukraine in the form of heavy or light weapons, but also material and humanitarian resources. The United States alone has sent more than $75 billion worth of aid. Even more fascinating is the human element of this international support. More than 3,800 people from across Europe and beyond have volunteered to join Ukraine in its struggle against Russia. These international volunteers, united by their dedication to Ukraine's cause, bring diverse skills and experiences to the fight, further bolstering Ukraine's defenses. The war also takes place on the political battlefield. The battle between Ukraine and Russia isn't just limited to these two countries. It extends beyond their borders and involves nations around the world. The global community plays a significant role in this conflict, and the way Ukraine handles its international relations is another key to its resistance. Both NATO and EU have persistently denounced Russia's aggressive behavior towards Ukraine and have imposed economic sanctions on Russia. These sanctions aim to put economic pressure on Russia and dissuade further hostile actions. Even countries with more complex relationships with Russia, like Turkey and China, have found themselves courted by Ukraine. These relationships may be more delicate, but they open up new potential channels for cooperation and support. However, these international relationships are double-edged swords. While they provide assistance and support, they also come with their own demands and conditions. For instance, closer ties with the West might require reforms and changes that are politically challenging within Ukraine. By playing this global chess game effectively, Ukraine gains an extra layer of protection and resources to counter Russia's might. In the next segment, we'll explore potential future scenarios for Ukraine and the strategies they may use in these situations. The ongoing situation could continue in a state of frozen conflict. This is a term used to describe a conflict that isn't actively escalating but isn't moving towards resolution either. In this scenario, Ukraine would likely continue with its current strategies of using unconventional warfare, maintaining national unity, and leveraging international support. However, an escalation of the conflict is also a possibility. This could be triggered by various factors, such as major geopolitical events, changes in leadership, or shift in international alliances. In a case of escalation, Ukraine would have to intensify its efforts across all fronts. The country might also need to focus more on diplomatic efforts to prevent or limit the escalation. On the other hand, there is a chance for de-escalation, or resolution. This would likely require significant diplomatic negotiations involving Ukraine, Russia, and possibly other international actors. In this scenario, Ukraine's strategy would involve ensuring that any resolution safeguards their sovereignty and national interests. Whether it's developing more advanced cyber warfare techniques, strengthening its economic resilience, or forging new international alliances, the key to Ukraine's resistance lies in its ability to adapt and innovate. As of early July 2023, this war has seen some major turn of events, like the Wagner Group deciding to turn on its Russian ally but to backpedal soon after, or the fact that Ukrainian troops have been advancing in the south and in the east with greater counteroffensive. The war is far from over, but the Ukrainian army has managed to stop the Russian advance and push them back on a good part of their territory. While the future of the conflict remains uncertain, one thing is clear: Ukraine has demonstrated that it won't back down easily. As we watch the situation unfold, let's hope that peace and diplomacy will eventually prevail.